In general, I think that electric cars are a good innovation, but still we have not a lot of answers, like where shall we get all this electricity from? Because we have the lack of electricity in general, and then we don't know where we shall get this lithium from for all these batteries, because we know that around 2/3 of all production of lithium in the world globally is in the hands of Chinese. So it is the question if we want to be addicted to Chinese lithium as we were addicted to Russian gas and oil.
So which side are you on then? Are you on the side of Germany, Italy and Poland?
No, I'm on the side of the European Union and European citizens, because what we didn't mention, a colleague mentioned car industries, but we have to be realistic that they fulfill our budget, so we have to think about our industry, because the role of European Union will be stronger globally if we are financially stronger, so it is connected. So it is not just to forget.
Let's just hear from Julia from Transport and Environment. What's your take on all this? I'm sure you're watching it much closer than our viewers.
Well, this is completely unprecedented. I think we need to take a step back before we start talking about e-fuels, which are at best a niche solution. The deal was negotiated in good faith between the European Parliament, all the governments and the Commission. And concessions and compromises were made. There's already then an opening for the so-called synthetic fuels. For example, there's a review in 2026. All the safeguards are there. And Germany voted and supported that deal in November. Now, due to some internal political backlash back home in Germany, they're going back on that agreement. And that what's at stake today for me is credibility of Europe's climate agenda, but also credibility of Chancellor Scholz as a European partner.
Well, is it domestic politics, I'm wondering? I mean, let's just take a look at what the German Transport Minister has been saying over the last couple of days, Mr. Volker-Wissing. He's obviously from the business-friendly FDP party, affiliated to Renew Europe here. He said, whoever is serious about climate-neutral mobility must keep all technological options open and also use them. He said, I don't understand this fight against the car and why people want to ban some technologies. And he's obviously being fully supported by the car lobby. And as we've explained there, a lot at stake, of course, for the industry.
I think it is not just about the car lobby. Let's speak, for example, about Croatians, people from my homeland. So when you want to buy an electric car, it is 60,000, 70,000 euro. No, in Croatia there are not a lot of people who have this money. So you can invest in electric cars, saying, I will provide some solar panels on my roof, charge for free at my home. But then at the end, how many people can afford this? So I think that it is. We speak now about this lobby. What about the lobby of power people? Who cannot afford electric cars?
And what would your message be, Francesco? I'll start with you. To people who are sitting at home and they have two cars outside the door, they need those cars. They're not ready to change.
Sure. I think the incentives must be also to the new industry. So we are always talking about an old industry, and the new industry is about public transportation on major cities, but also on rural areas. We have to talk about transportation railroads. Also, the automation of cars is also a huge boom. So the next 10 years, we'll also have more access to cars that we don't need to possess. We can obviously have our cars, but they are stuck 90% of the time, just stopped. So it's just a very inefficient industry. And so we are creating new jobs, we are creating new opportunities, and we are creating a new business model that is being adapted in other parts of the world. And so we must be in the forefront. And so I think we also have to connect all these strategies. Railroad strategy, you talked about the energy. Well, it's simple. We have to unify the single markets in energy terms. We also have to find new ways of having different type of resources. And so the strategy also to have more minerals from other parts and recycle them is also connected to other types of strategies in the European Union. So this is not just
connected.
Yeah.
But what the headlines, of course, this week in Europe were those three countries, Germany, Italy and Poland, very much holding up this specific legislation on combustion engines. And we were actually digging up some figures that we found at Eurostat, and they say that new registered cars in Europe in 2021, it was Germany, Italy and Poland who bought the most. You can take a look there at your screens at those figures. And the majority there are buying cars that run on petrol or diesel. So you can see people still not ready really to make that switch. And obviously, of course, it's not their fault.
It's new cars.
The infrastructure. These were talking about new cars, yeah.
That's why I said that we are coming back to the reality, because we have to make a review of our ideas. It's not we can have nice ideas, but if we don't have a review on this, then it can be like path to hell is paved by good intentions. So it's not just about good intentions. It's to check how it works in the reality.
You know what industry hate as well? They hate these exit dates. They don't like to see that 2035 coming up on their computers. They hate that.
So what is really important to underline is actually to look at where battery electric cars are today. Last year, on average, every fifth person in Europe bought a new car with a plug. It is a solution that people want. They're still a bit expensive, but that's why we need this law to scale it up. Given that final date gives the entire industry a signal that we're going electric. We will be working on raw materials. We will be scaling the supply. But let's also take a second to look at the alternative that the German liberals and those that do not support this data advocating. They're advocating for climate neutral fuels. These fuels are 5 times more expensive than petrol, and they actually will be only affordable to the likes of Porsche drivers. They don't even yet exist, not in quantities we need, while we already sell millions of battery electric vehicles. And ultimately, when we look at air pollution, that's what matters for our cities, they will emit the same amounts of toxic pollution. It's at best a niche solution, and at the same time, as we are dithering and questioning one of the key laws, not just about climate, but also industrial policy, US and China are in a race to secure real clean tech on batteries, and we are wasting time.
Okay, Julian has it all there in a nutshell, but I mean, you didn't mention rural Europe. I mean, it's easier if you live in a city to walk, to take a bike, or to take the metro.
But that's why it's so important for us also to have a bigger perspective and also talk about public transportation, mass public transportation, railroad the investments. The municipality is also being brought up to the investments. So there's a lot of money being available through this, the European Central Bank, to the national budgets, municipal budgets, to help this transition. And obviously the automation of this sector is a thing that will happen. And so if we scale up also this industry, people will have more access to cars, then they will need to have a car. So you said that some families need to have the cars because they have their daily lives. But if they have services that they provide the services and they don't need to have the extra cost of having cars, if it's feasible and it's available, people will have it.
It sounds a bit like a utopia though to me.
No, it's a fact. And the US industry is already, the auto industry is already gaining ground on that level. So having a new type of industry that is based on new models of commerce and transportation.
Quick reaction for you, and then I would like to talk
first,
about
when you speak about every fifth car in European Union, in Croatia it is every 25th car, you know, and so there are countries which are not that, so to say, developed and so rich. And concerning sources, you know, we can speak about China or I don't know, but as I said, there is the question of sources. Now, the second biggest source of lithium is in Iran. You know what? So what I want to say, shall we really be addicted to these sources from outside, you know, and to cancel combusted engines? I don't
Fossil
think
fuels are also
Can I come in on
outside.
lithium? I think that's excellent we're having this debate. Actually, lithium is everywhere in the world. When we look at projects in Europe, half of all the lithium Europe needs in 2030 can come from here, Europe, Germany, Portugal, Spain. We have that stuff, and it's completely different from oil because it is a lot more dispersed. You talked about Croatian drivers. I also come from Eastern Europe. I really have support to that point. But this law will exactly push car makers to mass produce electric vehicles, to make them sustainable for drivers, to make them affordable for drivers in Croatia. E-fuels, people like me will never afford.
Quick reaction, Mr.
So it's not on politicians to push transition, you know, like we have to respect the market. We can make some motivation, but we cannot force them, you know.
If we have public subsidies, public strategies that benefit some industries, obviously it's policymakers that dictates the transition. So
but at the end,
you are a policymaker.
Well,
that's our role to protect also poor people. That's why we legislate and make regulations.
We're not that successful in this, you know.
Yeah.
So it's that
if the
more or less.
If the market exists, we didn't subsidize most of the industry that we have: petrol fuels, agriculture, big industry.
Energy transition will
Let's
be
just
really
take a
hard.
listen. Let's bring in the perspective from motorists, because we sent our Elliot Skillings out to the streets of Brussels to hear whether motorists are ready to give up their very own polluting car. Take a listen.
Yes, absolutely. We need to do something about all these cars, you know? But going electric, I don't think is going to fix the problem. We just have too many cars.
It's a complicated answer because for some people it's very difficult for having a car, but for the ecological system it's great.
Yes, of course. I think that not everyone will be happy because a lot of people are against this new ecological EU vision, but I think that it's a good idea for our environment.
Not for me, not suitable for me. I drive too much a day, so that's just impossible for me.
Yes, because it's in order to save our planet and to ensure the future for our children.
So the majority seem to be on board with some sort of change there, bearing in mind, with the idea, of course, and bearing in mind that was a city, that was Brussels city centre, Francesco.
There's a lot of things that we cannot only look through the perspective of this legislation. So again, we have to look at the broader picture. And you were talking correctly about our need to be more independent energetically. And we made a mistake of, for example, allying ourselves to Russia. And we have a lot of allies that are not very democratic when we talk about fossil fuels. And so if we want to broaden up the scale, also fossil fuels are a huge industry that undermines our independence. So that's why we need to shift. We need to have more partnerships and more partnerships in the democratic countries.
What about you personally? Like, how many cars do you have?
Yeah,
what kind of car do you drive?
you know, I have bought a new car a month ago, and I wanted to buy an electric one, you know, but when I asked, you know, about the range, they said officially it was 540. Then they say, oh, okay, no, it's not 540, it's just theoretically it's 450. And then I asked, and during winter, oh yeah, they said 350. And then I said, and if I drive faster than 100 kilometers per hour, then they said, okay, it's 250. And then I asked, you know, and should I fulfill till the end, you know, charge the battery 100%? No, it's not good for the health of battery.
So did you buy hybrid instead?
No, I bought a hybrid. But you know, just to make it wider, of course, it will improve. It will improve for sure. And as I said, electric car is a good invention. But putting that in context, you know, the energy crisis didn't start with Russian aggression to Ukraine. It started before because our ideas of politicians were too ambitious. You know, we had the lack of the energy.
So maybe a quick reaction from me. I think it's great that we're having this debate. So I personally ride an electric bike, so the best of both worlds, and it's fantastic. It works for me. The energy transition will be really hard, but we cannot do it because climate change is a race against the clock, right?
In Latvia, drive your electric bike too.
So actually, in Latvia, I take public transport. I don't drive cars at this stage in my life. But what is important to stress that because it will be so hard, we need to be honest about it. US politicians need to be honest. It will require trade-offs, require supporting workers, require completely changing our supply chains. But that's the only way to go. And the only way for Europe to succeed, if we go back now to the cars debacle, is to stay united, for European leaders to work together, set a clear signal, not dither, and to go there.
Now it's creating a fiery debate among EU leaders. We saw earlier this week as well Clément Beaune, the French minister, who's very close to, of course, the French President Emmanuel Macron, saying that Germany's scale back would be a, quote, environmental and industrial failure if we walked back on that 2035 target.
Well, we are talking about a country that continues to push nuclear when the rivers of the country are dry. So their perspective on energy transition...
The Germans have a point, right? I mean, it's a
Portugal
huge industry.
is also a huge industry, and we are in favour.
a look, in fact, at the industry across the European Union, at the stats and the facts, because currently 14.6 million Europeans work in the car industry, directly, of course, and indirectly. 18.5 million cars are made in the European Union per year, and motor vehicles allegedly account for 440.4 billion in taxes per year. That's according to ASIA, the car.
Automotive industry is key for Europe, but it needs to be in touch with what the future industry is. Just yesterday, Volkswagen said they're building their battery factory in the US first instead of Europe. Our analysis shows 2/3 of our battery factories are now at risk. Let's look outside of Europe, what's happening in the world. China's dominance, US Inflation Reduction Act. This law is the last thing we need we can't afford not to give that signal on investment certainty.
Just Francesco, describe the impact it's having on our health, living in a polluted city like Brussels with cars clogged up every day as we go to work.
That's the thing of us looking at holistic. So if we internalize all the costs, not only the geopolitical cost that is very relevant, but also the pollution that emanates from these cars and the footprint that they still have on our bigger cities, well, we are talking about public health. So obviously this also correlates with this transition that is necessary.
Okay, and very briefly from yourself.
So from my side, I completely support this. In my town, I drive bike, not electric one, but because of my shape, I want to ride in our bike. But it is the question of philosophy. What is in our focus? Is the planet or people? And I think in my focus are people, men, and of course, because we think about the future of mankind, then we think also about the planet, but not vice versa.
This is a story we will certainly come back to and keep our viewers very much informed on a fascinating debate. But thank you so much for your insights, and don't go anywhere, because after the break, we'll have the latest on the scandal hitting the European Commission this week about a top EU official taking business trips to Qatar. Don't go anywhere.
La prossima edizione del notiziario tra meno di 2 minuti su Euronews.
Hop, je sors.
Est-ce que vous pouvez nous montrer un petit peu là ce qui s'est passé Je vous ai juste derrière. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous expliquer
Careful out there, yeah? Yeah, thank you. Oh my god!
L'esercito russo tenta una nuova offensiva a Bakhmut. I mercenari del gruppo Wagner si intestano la conquista della parte orientale della città. Stretta di mano a Washington per l'estensione di una parte dei sussidi americani anche alle imprese europee, Biden allontana Bruxelles dalla Cina. Con l'esercito russo che avanza da est e da nord-ovest, i combattimenti nella città ucraina di Bakhmut stanno entrando in una nuova fase di escalation. Fuori dalla città, nella vicina Kostiantynivka, gli ultimi bombardamenti hanno ferito almeno 8 persone. Così si presenta dall'alto la città di Bakhmut, dove si combatte la battaglia più sanguinosa dall'inizio della guerra. In molti la definiscono l'inferno sulla terra. Nella città operano anche le truppe mercenarie filorusse del gruppo Wagner, che stanno tentando di spostare gli scontri nel complesso metallifero Azov. Il capo della società, Yevgeny Prigozhin, ha dichiarato di aver aperto centri di reclutamento in 42 città russe. Lo stesso Prigozhin si è vantato di aver conquistato con le sue truppe la parte orientale della città, ma ha espresso al Cremlino le lamentele per la scarsità di munizioni. La battaglia per la città ucraina di Bakhmut si trascina da mesi, priva di un reale valore in termini strategici, è diventata simbolica per entrambe le parti. La ragione per cui i sanguinosi combattimenti non sono mai cessati qui risiede nel piano politico. Il peso di una sconfitta sarebbe insostenibile per entrambe le parti.
Unfortunately, what happens, it's like Verdun. Once a lot of people start dying for a place, it doesn't really matter. You've got blood capital already spent, and then because of that spend of blood, it becomes politically significant. Once people start attacking and need a win, it takes on a whole little world of its own.
La Russia cerca a Bakhmut una vittoria clamorosa per rimediare a tutta una serie di pesanti sconfitte incassate negli ultimi mesi del 2022. Kiev, da parte sua, sostiene di essere sorprendentemente in grado di contenere l'offensiva russa e di dissuadere il nemico da lanciare offensive in altre aree del paese.
The Ukrainians are using it, a defensive battle, to inflict the highest amount of casualties on the Russian attackers at the lowest possible cost to themselves, before unleashing a counter punch or two against Russia at a time of Ukraine's choice and also a place of their choosing.
Mosca crede che con la cattura di Bakhmut avrebbe la porta aperta per il resto della regione di Donetsk, ma gli studiosi faticano a intravedere anche in tal caso una svolta nel conflitto. Mettere da parte i malumori e trovare un terreno comune su interessi convergenti. Tra Ursula von der Leyen e Joe Biden c'è un cenno d'intesa per placare le distorsioni provocate dall'Inflation Reduction Act nel mercato europeo. Le aziende del vecchio continente, che vendono negli Stati Uniti materie prime utili per la produzione di batterie per veicoli elettrici, avranno le stesse agevolazioni garantite dalla legge americana per le imprese d'oltreoceano.
I think for us it's very important that on this topic we join forces because it is crucial for our future, for fighting climate change and limiting global warming. So for us, was and is important that we join forces, that we are complementary, that we boost the respective clean tech industry on both sides.
Il nuovo accordo commerciale, a cui lavoreranno le due sponde dell'Atlantico, ha anche un altro obiettivo: ridurre la dipendenza dalle materie critiche cinesi. Da Israele c'è collaborazione all'ambizione del governo italiano di fare della penisola un hub energetico nel Mediterraneo per l'Europa. In visita a Roma il primo ministro israeliano Benjamin Netanyahu promette investimenti nelle infrastrutture energetiche, certo del potenziale delle relazioni ritrovate con gran parte del Medio Oriente grazie agli accordi di Abramo.
Cooperation in gas, Italy, you said, wants to be a hub for the supply of energy for Europe and for many other things. Well, we think that exactly that, and we have gas reserves that we are now exporting, and we'd like to expedite more gas exports to Europe through Italy.
Con i loro sistemi economici e produttivi complementari, Italia e Israele possono guardare insieme verso le nuove frontiere tecnologiche, ha sottolineato il ministro per le imprese Adolfo Urso. Con Tel Aviv e Roma vuole guardare lontano anche nei settori dell'idrogeno, della difesa e dello spazio.
Scoprite i progetti che danno impulso alle regioni in tutta Europa, i modi in cui migliorano la vita di tutti i giorni e le testimonianze di chi ne ha tratto vantaggio. Tutto questo in Smart Regions e su Euronews.
Welcome back to Brussels, my love, with me, Maeve McMahon, where we're taking a look back at some of the European stories that hit the headlines this week. Well, this week saw intense daily briefings in Brussels between the EU Commission spokespeople and the Brussels press corps. At the heart of the tension, new revelations that a top EU official, Heinrich Kollelei, went on a number of work trips to Qatar, and Qatar footed the bill. All this as he was negotiating an EU-Qatar transport deal. Did you follow that news?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, what's your reaction?
So first, I would like to underline the importance of NGO sector, which seems to be crucial in all this Qatargate. So first, they call them non-governmental, and they receive most of their budget from government.
What's your reaction to this specific news?
Which one?
On the European Commission.
About
the fact that the Director General went on these business trips.
Yeah, but to be honest, if we want to be a global player, so to say, we cannot now cancel all the travels in of European.
So they did the right thing, you think?
I don't know. Specifically why they traveled there, if they were connected to this corruption and fair, of course, I guess.
Okay,
and to be very clear.
Look, I think you can travel everywhere you want, of course, for cooperation, but you don't need to get the person whom you're about to legislate or impact to pay for your deal.
Of course, I agree.
I think the fact that both the European Parliament and European Ombudsman are getting into this case means there's something there. We don't know.
Ombudsman Emily O'Reilly, she sent a letter specifically this week to the European Commission on this point, on these business trips. Francesco, your reaction?
Well, it's clear that democracy has costs, and the Commission and the Parliament and the Council have a budget to this type of trips. And obviously, if you are a legislator and you have responsibilities on some files, everything that you do should be recorded, should be paid by the institution, so there's the most transparent path on the legislative process. In this case, it didn't happen. Again, several institutions, International Transparency, the Corporate Europe Observatory, already talk about the transparency and the rule book.
Well, Francisco, you mentioned Transparency International, and we actually caught up with Michiel van Wieten. Our Paul Lara Capano spoke to him earlier. He, as you can imagine, as the head of Transparency International, feels very strongly about this. Take a listen.
Well, we don't know how big the problem is, and Transparency International wrote already in December to say that we thought that there should be an independent external investigation to look precisely at the issue of hospitality, of perks, of travel being paid by third countries, by third parties, because if that's the case, then that creates conflicts of interest. And the EU is making policy on very important topics that affect citizens on a daily basis, and citizens have a right to know who these politicians are talking to and who's paying for their travel. There are lots of rules. They aren't perfect, but there are rules. But nobody's enforcing them. And as long as you allow people to get away with breaking the rules, they will continue doing so, and the breaches will get bigger and bigger.
So there are rules.
Yeah.
The problem is nobody is enforcing the rules.
Yeah.
And it's the same in the European Parliament.
Yeah, I completely agree with him. So about the conflict of interest and who should pay for the trip. So I think that we have a consensus there. But we really should consider what is in the backstage, so to say, how it came to this fear. So what I wanted to say about these NGOs, which had, so to say, that the biggest part in this. So as I said, they're not governmental, they're not civil organizations.
We've already discussed that. The NGOs. So let's just move on.
The NGOs have nothing to do with this.
To speak about NGOs.
On this topic, NGOs don't have
because it's the crucial in all this Qatargate.
Yes, regarding the Parliament.
This is another topic.
Mr. Holloway.
No, it's another topic. It was industry and the Qatar.
So what we're asking today is how damaging will this be for the
Okay,
European
we can
Commission?
speak also this, yeah, but we agreed on this. So it is. Yeah.
But let's then speak about the European Parliament, in fact, and how it has changed, if it has changed, since Qatargate and since we've seen Eva Kaili behind bars.
Yeah, I don't know about that. So when we have some vision
nothing's changed.
No, it's changed. We're making an evaluation. The President Metsola is also having a review of the legislation in our regulations. In our perspective from the Greens, we should go further. So we should be even tighter with the expenses that we have as members of the Parliament, the trips that we have, the transparency on the trips, who do we meet. So to be more mandatory and less voluntarily, so to say. And so we are doing our homework.
Maybe can I think there are two things here at stake. One is this particular scandal, and now with the European Commission, whether it's a real or perceived conflict of interest, it really casts doubt on this entire deal being negotiated, right? Whether it's in good